Do the Vikings have something in Dallas Turner? Can we glean anything from Max Brosmer's performance? What about the offensive line? We got one guy who's maybe being a little bit mistreated, and a little bit more discussion about Kevin O'Connell's play calling and structure. What are we doing? Find out here on another episode of X's and SKOLs.
X's and SKOLs with Tyler Forness and Luke Braun. Dissecting the All-22 for your Minnesota Vikings.
Welcome back, ladies and gentlemen, to another episode of X's and SKOLs. I'm your host, Tyler Forness. Producer Dave will pop in the bottom right corner, and to my left, Locked On Vikings Luke Braun, where he does a lot of stuff also on Patreon, patreon.com/LukeBraunNFL. Luke, how are you?
Hey, doing all right. I've been recording nonstop for like 3 hours. So this is the last thing. We're going crazy.
Yeah, we're going to go crazy. And I think there really isn't a whole lot we can glean from Max Brosmer. I think our friend Kevin could have done a better job than Max Brosmer. It was just a brutal day. I think I found the one really nice rep where he just threw a seed down the seam to Hawkinson. And I think the one thing
that was kind of fun. I almost bad faith posted that one just to troll.
So I did post it, but I posted it that it was a really nice rep from Hawkinson because he stemmed him and Warrior out to get the leverage and then allowed that throw to happen. But man, it was a rough day for him.
The only safety in the league losing reps with Hawkinson. But
yeah, Hawkinson's a weird one. I think we can have a nice conversation about him down the line because there's going to be talk about, hey, do they need to cut TJ Hawkinson for cap space? And that creates a whole another bevy of issues. But we're not here to talk about the future. We're here to talk about
we'll get
now.
to it.
Yeah. Where do you want to start? You want to start on offense, Luke? Do you want to start on defense? What's your thinking here today?
So I think the headline is probably Dallas Turner, and I'll tee you up because I've got stats. That for one, of the first rounders in the 2024 draft, right? Latu, Chop Robinson, Dallas Turner, and Jared Verse. Dallas Turner has the highest pressure percentage. He's edging out Verse by 0.2%. So we have that right now. That's all season, by the way.
Let's go.
And the Verse has more pressures by virtue of pass rushing all the time and, not having two Pro Bowlers that he's rotating out with. But he's playing well. And over the last 3 weeks, the explosion. Dallas Turner has 4 sacks, which has made him the sack leader on the Vikings and second to only Grenard in pressures on the Vikings. And over the last 3 weeks, his pressure percentage is 5th best in the league of qualifying edge rushers, up there with Myles Garrett and Jalix Hunt, who's having a ridiculous year, up there with, all the big names.
Yeah, I've been really impressed.
He's white hot right now.
He is white hot right now. And the 2 reps that I really noticed, both strip sacks, which very funny that it was the first game where a player had 2 strip sacks since the Nate Poole game, and there were 2 of them. Kenny Mixon and Lance Johnstone each had 2 strip sacks on Josh McCown in that game, and they still found a way to lose, which might be the most Viking stat of all time.
It's truly a Vikings game.
It's absolutely incredible. But I think the second strip sack really stood out to me because I think the tight end blew the blocking assignment because he's on Turner's outside shoulder and he cuts across him to get Hargrave, and then Turner just, he gets to eat for free. But the first sack I found to be really impressive because it wasn't necessarily that he used a move. He just used pure speed, where Cross kind of gets his hands into his chest a little bit. Turner kind of like almost swats him away and then just doesn't bend the arc, just runs right around him and goes and gets Sam Darnold. And Darnold just runs right into the path, strip. And unfortunately, they don't recover. But the little details I'm finding in his work have just improved so much. And I've been talking about it a lot, and I know you and I have talked about it, Luke. When you get the baseline of play up a level, the splash plays will happen more often because you are doing things at just a more normal level, a higher level. And he's doing that. And he's doing that in coverage. He's doing that when he's playing the run. They're not displacing him in the run game. He's just holding up. And that in itself is a valuable asset, especially when you're a 255, 260 pound edge rusher. If you don't get moved, then you can allow linebackers to play a little bit more free. They don't have to cover as much space in a gap when they're trying to hit it right by you. Those little details matter, and he's done such a good job of those. And now we're seeing the splash plays. He's got 4 sacks in the last 3 weeks. I think 5, maybe 5 in the last 4 if you want to. I don't technically know if that one against the Ravens counts because he got the penalty, the roughing the passer, but a lot of really, really good from him. And Brian Flores talked about it on Tuesday where, look, he's doing all the little things right, and now you're starting to see it come to fruition.
Yeah, it's interesting. I got a very different vibe on some of those plays from what Dallas Turner did in this game. That's first strip sack, the one that the Seahawks recovered, meant so much to me because there was a finish to it. So it's speed to power, speed to bull, as Kevin O'Connell referred to it, is the fastball move for Dallas Turner. It's what he likes to do, right? 1, 2, 3 steps, turn into a bull rush and get under somebody, leverage, have that running start, helps you when you've got a weight disadvantage, which he almost always will. And he would walk back tackles a lot, but he would never finish. So if you were at all mobile, you could just sidestep, right? Or you could just stand there and know that there's a guy in my face a little bit, but I can still deliver the ball. But on that play, he did have a move. He ripped. He finished with a rip move. And that's all I need is for you to bust that out 3 times a game just to keep the guys honest. Because Charles Cross was setting up, anticipating speed to power. Because of course you would anticipate speed to power. So he throws his legs, his feet behind him, gets his weight out in front of him a little bit, and essentially sets up to anchor. And then he wasn't in a position to move laterally at all, which meant that Turner could rip around him, get there, had to go a yard above QB depth, and then work back down and gets the sack. And then, the second one was just a protection bust on the Seahawks. I don't put a lot of stock into that one. Way to swipe at the ball. And that's the one that ends up in an actual turnover. So he probably gets a lot more credit for it, which is ironic. But there are a couple of plays in this game that still concern me. Like he has generated a lot of pressure. He's won in the pass game quite a bit. But there is still some concern that I have in, like, there's a play where Cody White just jacks him up on a crack block. And you kind of can't have that happen to you if you're an edge rusher with a receiver. Or the only touchdown, the Zach Charbonnet touchdown, he gets double teamed by 2 tight ends and washed out just like down the river like he's Moses. That can't happen to you. You got to fight better than that. And that just comes from being a little bit light. And kind of what I'm gathering is, like, the best thing he has is his stance and exploding out of that stance, which is going to lead to a lot of wins, especially on the strong side, when you are aligning out wide to guarantee that you're going to get a tight end matchup, which, so the Vikings have loved to put him on the strong side this year, to get him up against tight ends, explode out of his stance, stand that tight end up, and then suddenly they can't run strong side. It's been awesome.
Yeah.
But once you're out of that stance, you can kind of apply a little bit of like what people do against like the best version of this, which is TJ Water, Aiden Hutchinson. These like more speed than power kind of guys, these fast runner type edge rushers, where you throw a motion at them or you run zone away from them, you get them out of their stance harmlessly. Don't try to block them right off the line, but rather block them with someone delayed. And that's where you get some of his worst moments, where he's he doesn't have the explosiveness of his stance. He's now high in his posture. And now it's just about being strong and heavy. And that's where we find Dallas Turner's weaknesses. So to me, there is very much still work to do. I don't want to deny the progress. And I definitely will not deny that he is white hot right now. But when it cools down, as it will for anybody, I think that's going to be why. Because I think teams are going to start to figure out, okay, this guy can produce if you try to, block him right away. But if you trap him, if you pull somebody over toward him, if you, use misdirection, if you use all this other stuff, you can kind of get him to be a liability. But the advantage of that is that that's schematic resource, right? If somebody's pulling a guy just to handle Dallas Turner or doing misdirection just to handle Dallas Turner, in a way, you've already won. You've already made their play a little slower just by the threat of you. And I think that's probably where we're headed with Dallas Turner until he gets a little stronger. Maybe not bulkier, because I don't want him to, he's still got to cover. You don't want to be slower, but stronger and, mature a little more physically, right? You're in your early 20s, you still have some bulking to do. So until he's like 25, 26, that's when I think men tend to hit their like muscular, like that's when things plateau a little bit more.
Yeah.
So that feels like it feels like there's still growing to do there. So I kind of want to temper it, but really nice stuff.
Yeah, I think you make a really good point about how he's getting a little washed out on like crack blocks and stuff, because what I'm seeing where I feel really impressed is if he's in his stance and then he's going up against like Charles Cross on like an inside zone or on the backside of a duo or something like that. He's getting in there, he's getting his hands up, and he's not being displaced, where that was happening last year.
Yeah, like the Falcons game where he just got killed. And that touchdown looked like that play from the Falcons game to me. Like that harkened back to an old time.
And I think if we can get him to a point where he can grow and develop in those other areas, which, let's be real, we talked about his development a couple weeks ago because of my travel, we couldn't do a show last week. It feels like they're building like those foundational pieces little by little. They built all like the core basics of everything that he needs to do, and now they're starting to build upon all of those things. And he's significantly stronger than he was last year. He looks like a different human than he did last year because of all those strength additions. And now it's about continuing to build that strength and refining things and continuing to grow. So the fact that he did that little bit of a rip against Cross is a really good thing, because he's got the speed to bull. He's got the long arm, which is essentially the same thing, but a different variant. So tackles are probably still going to try and set you up in the same way. So I would love to see him
still asking tackles to anchor. Yeah.
I would love to see him pull out the ghost move that he busted out on Darnell Wright last year against the Bears on Monday Night Football, because that was disgusting. But we're on the right track with Turner. I don't think it's, I kind of did a video for A to Z Sports talking about, hey, I think we can start trying to think of this guy as a hit, but I think there's going to be so many in the fan base viewing him as, oh, you made 2 trades to go get him. No, they didn't. They made 1. And if you don't like that one, that's fine. But I think what we're starting to get in the trajectory that we're on, I think Turner's going to be a really core centerpiece to what this team is long term. And that's a good thing, because we don't have a lot of those right now. And that's one of the reasons why at 4-8, it feels like the sky is falling, instead of, oh, this is just a one bad year and next year we're going to be fine. Like, it feels like we've talked about the 49ers for the last like 8-9 years with Kyle Shanahan. We just don't have those core young guys right now. Turner feels like he's becoming one of those, and it's really good to see.
Yeah, you really need that. And, when you look at what the Vikings are going to be 3 years from now, right, which is going to be probably pretty different than what the roster is made of now, but almost certainly very different from what the roster is made of now, it gets a lot easier to imagine Dallas Turner as a part of that, whatever that is.
Absolutely. Before we kind of move on, because I know a decent amount we're talking about is on offense, I want to bring this up. Something we didn't talk about before the show, but Isaiah Rodgers can't tackle, man.
Dude, it's so bad.
Yeah. What are you seeing with that? Because I'm seeing him over pursue. I'm seeing him just not get him. I don't think he's unwilling to square up and just try to make a tackle, but almost every missed tackle is when he's not trying to square up. He's trying to just dive at ankles. He's getting baited. Like, Cooper Kupp took him to the woodshed, man. You can't let Unk do that to you. I'm sorry.
You can't get juked by Cooper Kupp in this stage of his career.
No, you can't. Are we talking about something that over the offseason might be fixable? Or could this maybe be something that disqualifies him from being a starter moving forward? Because in this defense, it's not like the Ed Donatel, Vic Fangio style defense where, okay, if one guy misses a tackle, it's more of a gang tackle mentality. This is a hyper aggressive defense where if you miss a tackle, that could be 30 yards. So how concerned are you on a long-term basis? Because it seems like it's progressively getting worse over the course of the year.
He did get yanked in that game. For anybody concerned with that, like they did put in Fabian Moreau after too many of those.
That's bad.
So, add it to the benched guys list. I mean, like Isaiah Rodgers, if we don't talk about his like contract situation or whatever, that's one thing. But here's what I'll say about the technique of that. Yeah, you want to break down. It's like it's like talking to a young punt gunner that'll come in. Like the most extreme version of this was special teams Dan Chisena. And he would just come in like a bat out of hell, and every returner could just kind of go like, oop, and, just move like a little bit to the side, and the guy would go flying past, and now suddenly you've lost a player. And it's a lot of that. It's a lot of, but the reason you do that, there's a couple. One, it could just be bad discipline, right? It could just be a little bit overhyped, going for the big hit, and you got to be like, dude, calm down, break down, do your job. The other thing could be, sometimes that's a facet, and that's the thing about tackling, is it's the last thing that happens on the play, which means that the angle that you tackle from is kind of a product of everything else that has happened so far. So when you're coming in from a bad angle and you're rushing and you're diving at someone's ankles, it could be because you were in a bad spot to start with. And maybe that's more the root cause of the problem. And you go, well, if you backed off and you hit your landmark correctly, you would have had time to break down, and then you would have been able to make that tackle. So I don't know which it is. I didn't look very closely at it because when I was watching the defense, I was doing Dallas Turner stuff. But the other thing is that there's just like he's just light, man. He's just small corner getting beat up by running back. Many such cases. Like there is sort of a limit to that where, you need that guy to be a force on the edge, and he needs to be able to pop somebody. And small doesn't necessarily need to mean that you're not a physical corner. Look at Antoine Winfield. But this, the Vikings, and this is another tackling thing that drives me nuts with the Vikings, is they come in high every play and they try to strip the ball every play. Well, they haven't stripped anybody in months.
Other than sacks.
Right, which is a different thing. But, we're talking about like they're basically trying to redo the Bengals game a whole bunch of times. And I think they've actually stripped one player. And it was in the Lions game in the last like 2 months, and they've missed God knows how many tackles for it. And the tackles they do make, they're getting dragged for 3-4 extra yards, and what could have been a 2nd and 8 turns into a 2nd and 4. So they need to come in low, shoot the hip, wrap, and tackle. They clearly have taught different habits this year. They clearly are just a high tackling, go for the ball team. It has not worked. It is far too late to change anything about it. So that's just going to be what it is. But if you look at like what we do next summer, I would be very much a let's never miss a tackle kind of team, because those teams that never miss a tackle, it makes, you maybe won't get as many turnovers, but it makes those turnovers so much more punishing, because the margin for error, like the ability to come back from it, is so much more suffocating, right? If you give up a turnover, but then the next time you get the ball, you can get chunk play after chunk play after chunk play because you can break all the tackles, you can kind of get forgiveness for that turnover. But if you're making every tackle and you have to dink and dunk your 3 yards, get a third down, you're living on the knife's edge, it can be a lot harder to come back from the one turnover you get. And so that's always has been a much better philosophy. The go for the ball crap has not been a thing in the NFL in a long time. And I'm like kind of astounded that the Vikings have committed to it this hard.
Yeah, I wonder if Brian Flores looked at what he had and decided, hey, in order for this unit to be really successful, we need to have the kind of turnover production that we did last year, especially if we have a couple injuries here and there. Like the Blake Cashman injury was really rough on the team. And then obviously then you missed Jonathan Grenard for a couple of games. Andrew Van Ginkel feels like he's missed half the season. So I'm curious if maybe that was it, because the only player that really has had a ton of success with that, just go strip the ball, it's Peanut Tillman. and his is more of a punch rather than just stand up and just try to yank at it. Like, I don't understand the philosophy, because all it's going to take is 2 to 3 games on tape for teams to realize it. Hey, that's all they're doing. Just push forward, put 2 hands on the ball, and then get an extra 5 yards.
Drop your shoulders, move your feet, and you're going to just move. And that's what everybody's been doing. And I think it's specifically hard for Rodgers, who is smaller, where he just gets put down like wet cardboard and guys just rip through him.
Not exactly a great defensive philosophy. But let's move over to the offensive philosophy. Offensive line, I thought, relatively speaking, wasn't a catastrophe against the Seahawks. I think some of that was Max Brosmer being an undrafted free agent rookie, first-time starter. He looked like he was running on about 10 monsters, just going way too fast. Not right. And like, if he would have been on like start 7, I think we could have seen a relatively decent game from a processing standpoint. It just was not there. But because first start, he was way too quick to go through progressions, and then he was holding the ball too long. I think the offensive line looked a little worse than it probably should have, but they still had their issues. One thing that you mentioned to me is I think Will Fries deserves a little bit of a discussion, because he was given that 5-year, $87.5 million contract, $20 million signing bonus. And when you're given that kind of contract, people want to see that kind of results. And I don't think we've seen that. But I also don't think he's been bad. He's just been kind of okay. Where are you at with Fries right now?
About the same place. We're paying good guard money for an okay guard, and you could be as annoyed about that as you want. But I start to push back when he starts getting the public enemy number 1 treatment that linemen tend to get when they get, give up 1 sack, get highlighted by the broadcast. And then kind of every time they make a mistake from there on out, it's as though they've given up that really bad sack again. And then that suddenly, because it's O-line, that's the only time you notice them. And in our minds, we've noticed a lineman screw up 6 times in a row, and we feel like they're screwing up every single play because we're not seeing the good plays because you're not paying attention. It's O-line. Which is why I like to do O-line a lot on my Patreon page. I'm working on a Will Fries one now that will probably be up by tomorrow night, maybe. So I could talk about that sack. But to follow up on the Brosmer thing real quick, there's not too much to say about it. But what I will say is there's kind of an oxymoron. He was rushing, he was going too fast, but he was holding the ball too long. And people are like, wait, what? How does that make sense? Slow is smooth and smooth is fast when it comes to progressing, right? If you rush, you're coming off of the first read before it's developed, right? You could have got the ball out to that first read. Now you're on to the second one. You're waiting for that to develop. And hurrying through 3 progressions is going to take longer than taking the appropriate amount of time for 1 or 2. So quarterbacks that get the ball out to the first or second read all the time, sometimes they get flack for that, as though, they're not doing anything. They're just throwing to their first read or whatever. But like, executing that properly is part of the skill. And so quarterbacks that can get the ball out to those guys on time, on the body, on the break for their first and second read really, really consistently makes for a good offense, and you're piloting that. But if you're just scanning across the field, check down, you're not doing anything, right? Like, suddenly you can't call plays for that. You can't run an offense for that. And it's completely non-functional. And then suddenly you look up, you score no points on the day, right? So that that was my Brosmer take. And then when you're doing that too, and you're holding the ball that much longer and then not seeing anything that's going on, that makes life harder on the O-line, especially when they're not expecting you to have the ball for that long. Because the O-line doesn't get to see what's going on behind them. They have to know this is a 5-step drop and a hitch. I've got to protect for X amount of time because of that. This is a quick game. I've got to protect for X amount of time because of that. And they will make different choices depending on that.
No, I think that's a really good point, because they don't know that they have to make those choices based on the information that they're given. And one thing, it was the sack from Darisaw that he allowed to Micah Parsons against the Packers, where they had that quick game swing screen to Aaron Jones. You had CJ Ham motion out to the flat to be the lead blocker, and JJ McCarthy does not set up his feet to throw the screen at all. It looks like he's trying to attack down the field. So either it's a situation where McCarthy communicated the play completely wrong, or he just completely screwed it up. And it feels like that's not something I put on Darrisaw, because he's just like, oh, all I need to do is push Micah Parsons inside real quick and just let him go touch the guard, and then he's not going to hit my quarterback because the ball's already out. Sure. Easy rep for a guy who's battling through a knee injury. And I think those little details matter a lot, because as much as the offensive line impacts the quarterback impacts the offensive line just as much. And
yeah,
I think it might have been the Browns. It was either the Browns game or the Eagles game. They had 21 pressures on Carson Wentz, and 6 of them were Wentz's fault. Like, you can't do that. You can't allow that many pressures to come because you are being a bozo. And to kind of wrap everything up with Fries, I do want to pose this question because I genuinely just don't know. And I'm not necessarily expecting you to know it either, Luke, because it's a medical question. I'm wondering if he's just not, if having that broken leg and the whole offseason just trying to do more rehab stuff, if that's hindering him like an ACL would, where he's just not nearly at full strength yet. And it's going to take until next year for him to really be comfortable with where he's at physically.
I don't think I would blame much of it on the injury, if at all. Those tend to heal pretty clean. Just the way I know about those kinds of fractures, those aren't knee injuries or like, soft tissue stuff that linger and hang around and are still bugging you. I could be wrong. I mean, everybody's different. Everybody's body is different. Yeah. But what I would say is, I want to get back to you on Fries a little bit more, because I've only just kind of pulled some of the plays. I haven't really dove in and made the video yet. But what I've noticed in the first place is he can get a little over aggressive with just kind of trying to set up into somebody, which I don't mind losing that way too bad. Like, you're just kind of swinging for the fences and striking out. But that to me is not like this existential issue. And it's also a pretty easy coaching point to be like, hey, be a little more conservative next time, and maybe you can help out. But I think he's just a little slow with his hands sometimes. And I think, like, so Will Fries has a very martial artsy background, which a lot of O-linemen do. And that's how he learned his hand fighting. And I think he's being a little too techniquey with it instead of just hit, and so guys will get by him. But the thing about that is that still leads to a bunch of wins. And in this Seahawks game, like in the video I'm about to record probably tomorrow, because my voice is shot, but in the video I'm going to record on it, there are a lot of plays that are like really freaking sweet from Fries in this game. And, I want to kind of be holistic, like I am with all O-linemen, right? Where it's not like, I feel like I'm repeating myself, dusting off pages from my Garrett Bradbury or Ed Ingram or whoever playbook, where the one sack that you saw, because the broadcast pointed it out, is not the entirety of his game. And I would say that one sack was very much a product. They were running stick and slants. That's one step drop quick game. When you're in one step drop quick game, linemen will jump set. There's a fantastic article from Jeff Schwartz from years ago about the different kinds of pass sets that a lineman will take. There's, your kind of classic kick step. That's your classic pass pro. There's your there's jump sets and there's like bucket steps, or they're not bucket step. There's, just kind of settle right in where you are. And so Will Fries goes forward toward Leonard Williams. And essentially all you're doing there, you don't need to really even touch the guy, because it's quick game. Ball's going to be out in 2 seconds. All you're doing is changing the angle he has to take to get around you, and making that angle wider because you're getting closer to him, just geometry. And if that angle is wider, he can get around you. The ball's going to be out. Nothing bad's going to happen. But if that quarterback holds the ball, it reduces that advantage. And now what you've done is you've essentially given yourself no time to react to whatever Leonard Williams has for you, and you're going to lose. So you're putting faith in that quarterback to get rid of the ball when he is supposed to. And it doesn't matter if it's Max Brosmer or JJ McCarthy or Brett Favre or Tyler Forness back there, you got to put that faith in your quarterback. You have to play the way the play dictates that. Like, you have to choose the set that the play dictates, and you just have to get rid of that ball. So the more I look at that one, the more sure I am that like, it's not a good quick set, and you hope that he holds up a little bit longer there, but that is certainly not the worst sack I've ever seen. There's some, Samia highlights that put that thing to shame on much more regular situations. And so I don't think that's a good rep from Will Fries. I don't think anybody's going to give him a plus and say he secretly did great. But I think it bothers people more because he's getting paid. And whenever a player gets paid, their margin for error goes to nothing. And I would caution you and say, like, how bad is that play really? And it's probably not great. But I'm not worried about Fries in the long term. I don't think the Vikings are like trying to get out of that contract or anything like that. I think that he's just a little overpaid, but ultimately an okay guard, and the problems on this offense exist elsewhere.
Let's talk about one of those problems, because had a lot of discussion about Kevin O'Connell's play calling here. We've had it on the Real Forno show, and it's been a topic, honestly, across all of Vikings media. And I mostly defended him because there have been a lot of adjustments. It just hasn't felt like it. And I think some of like the third and short, they haven't completed a single pass. I'm like, well, when you actually go watch the plays, they're really not that bad. One thing that really stood out to me was I was watching the first quarter, and it was a 3rd and 8 or 9. O'Connell's running like 18-yard out routes with Max Brosmer on like a 3rd and 9. It's just classic O'Connell. He thinks Sam Darnold or Kirk Cousins is back there. I've seen a lot of things to show that he is making adjustments and adaptations for his quarterback, and then he just keeps reverting back to, I just want to be a psycho and I want to hunt shots. I also want to kind of parlay this into a Justin Jefferson conversation, because these wide receivers, they can't catch a cold, man.
It's rough. Yeah. That one of those picks is very much on him.
Mm-hmm. It's bad, because I don't want to be body language guy, because body language guy sucks. But you just get the vibe that they're not buying what somebody is selling. And it's really rough. And like, if Jefferson asked for a trade, I think we would all be super pissed. But after watching the season, I think I would get it. Like, there's a disconnect.
I think you're scoring a little bit there with we don't need to talk about Jefferson asking for a trade. This isn't that kind of show. I don't think we want it to be that kind of show.
But I don't want it to be that kind of show.
There's a slowness, I think, to the way they play. It's been lethargic. I think they all looked faster before. And so maybe that is an emotional thing, right? I mean, they haven't been 4-8 before. The worst these guys have done is hover around 500 or be, a fringe playoff team. Yeah. Basically since Zimmer's first year. I mean, they've not had a lot of these seasons that were just like over by Thanksgiving. So yeah, they're a little bit bummed. And I would say that it's reasonable to expect NFL players to play hard even when the vibes are off. And if they are not, we can levy that as a criticism against them. But I did want to circle back to the play calling thing you were talking about. There's somebody in the chat that was speaking to this, Bulldog, that was speaking to some of the stuff. He was talking about some of the stuff Kurt Warner said about this, and how the timing of this offense should be that at the top of your drop, the first route breaks. And then you hitch once and the second round breaks. And you hitch another time and the third route breaks. And you should be able to basically always be throwing a ball on the break of a route. And you kind of read it short to long and so on. And that's why some of these routes, and this is something I know Kurt Warner doesn't like, because it's not anything they would have ever thought about back when he played.
Not Martian, that's for sure.
It's pure progression, because he likes to read defenders. And, if he goes left, I'll throw right. But that's why it's pure progression. And that's why some of the backside routes spend a lot of time like whirly birding. That's why there's a lot of like returns, and whip routes and stuff that take a little longer to run, but need to be the short option because of like a grander part of the design. But the timing of that is wrong. Routes are breaking simultaneously. They shouldn't be doing that. They're breaking after the top of the drop. They shouldn't be doing that. Everything works in concert, right? If the quarterback is dropping to 9 yards because it's a 5-step drop, the linemen are defending a 9-yard pocket. And if he needs to now step up, now the linemen are susceptible to an inside move if the quarterback needs to step up to buy time because the route's not there. And if everything works and times together and properly, you get Stafford Rams. We're all really super happy. That's what is going on in LA with McVay right now. But without it, not only do you get struggles, you get our staple plays don't function. They don't work. Yeah. There is no way for someone to make a play and showcase their talent. And you can be the most talented route runner in the world. If your route is breaking at the wrong time, you can be open as hell and look back and watch the quarterback get sacked. And what does that do for anybody? To me, as far as I understand the roles, the division of labor in the Vikings staff, that is a Wes Phillips issue. That is Wes Phillips designing plays without a great sense for the speed of his players and the speed of his of JJ McCarthy's dropbacks, the speed that JJ McCarthy processes at. And yeah, I mean, they haven't started him before. Of course they don't have experience and they don't know that. He hasn't been able to untangle that problem. And so I wouldn't be surprised if Phillips became the sacrificial lamb at the end of the season. And I would get it. And I would actually kind of find that to be a more productive move than it usually is when the offensive-minded play-calling head coach fires his OC. That's usually like just sort of a meat shield move that doesn't feel like it changes anything. But I do think that what Wes Phillips has done this year is responsible for when stuff just straight up doesn't function in theory. Like it is broken on paper before anyone takes the field. That's the play design guy. And I understand Wes Phillips to be the actual play designer, making the decisions of what drop back should we pair with this passing concept. And, O'Connell, of course, is probably in a lot of those rooms too, but like the legwork of that is Phillips. And that is what O'Connell's job was in LA with McVay as the play calling head coach. So people talk about like giving up play calling, like O'Connell giving up play calling. But I think if he did, he'd be giving it to the guy who's maybe even more responsible for the problem.
Yeah, I think the idea of O'Connell giving up play calling we're still quite a ways away from that. One of my big things.
I got a bunch of mailbag questions about it. I didn't answer any of them because I'm with you. Like it's too far. But like, I think bringing in a fresh mind to design new plays based on what we know McCarthy can and can't do from this season, could possibly be an avenue toward a much more functional offense next year.
One of my big things is like I love continuity on a staff. I think it's great to have people who you trust, who work well together, who understand the strengths and weaknesses of each other, and you can kind of step in and fill some of those gaps. But I also think if you are with somebody for too long, you start to lose creativity. You start to lose new ideas. And not having those new ideas, I think, can be a really big detriment. And I think we're seeing some of that where you talk about how some of the plays, they're just not in sync with what we got going on. And it also stems to a bigger problem that, what do you call it? The Vikings coaches don't know how good their players are.
Yeah.
We've talked about that quite a few times. Yeah. They don't know. So
anyways, I think Isaiah Rodgers benched. Add another one to the pile.
Bringing in a offensive coordinator, even if it's in the same family, like Sean McVay has rotated out offensive coordinators. You brought in Mike LaFleur after that 1 year that did not go well with Aaron Rodgers. brought him back. Look at the things they're doing on offense. By refreshing the ideas in the room, you can start to really build on stuff, and you can add things to the playbook to help your young quarterback. My theory is that JJ McCarthy just does not like to run slants, and that's why they're really not in the playbook. I have no idea if that's true or not, but
I don't think they were in previous years either. It's just the McVay scheme wants to use choice instead of slants as their 3-step drop quick game du jour.
Which I have
or they'll run
with using
darts,
choice,
which are different. Darts don't take the first 2 steps. And they're usually part of an RPO.
Mm-hmm. And I have no problem with that. If that's just the case, who cares? If you're not running slants, they've had some really good quick game answers over the course of time. I'd like there to be more, but it is what it is. But by bringing in new voices, you can all of a sudden solve problems that were there that you unintentionally glossed over because you're looking at the same thing over and over and over again. But a new person can see, hey, this sucks. Stop doing it. And all of a sudden you can have a problem fixed just by having somebody new in the building. And I think doing that, getting a quarterback developer and maybe a new offensive line coach, because I'm going to be honest, I'm not a PFF grade guy. Those PFF grades from Ettingham are good. And guess what? The tape's pretty solid too. So maybe there's something to having a new offensive line coach. I know Dave has been a proponent of it. He's not the biggest fan of how some of this stuff is taught. And Dave, being a former offensive lineman, I think is a little bit more qualified to talk about some of this stuff than I am. So new voices, I think, is what the move is, because hopefully it sparks creativity and fixes things. And we'll see if that happens.
Yeah, I don't know. I guess I'm staying agnostic on the Chris Cooper thing. I don't have a particularly strong opinion on him one way or another. The thing that I've always said about him is that because I belong to a very much different school of thought, the McNally, the Bob Wiley, the Alex Gibbs school of square and pass protection at all times, that when I see, every time I see a lineman lose, my brain goes, well, that's why you should stay square. And that's just a decision. I mean, there's a million legendary Hall of Fame O-line coaches that teach it that way too. So that's picking a favorite color. It's very much a subjective matter. So I've kind of just abstained from that conversation. I think there are a couple feathers in Cooper's cap that we don't talk about enough, like how Donovan Jackson has played pretty well, and that's a young player. And how Christian Darrisaw didn't really take off till he got here. And that definitely earns you some goodwill. However, when the offense is as bad as it is, I've been for Locked On Vikings, just comparing this to a lot of the previous years where other coaches got fired and stuff. And this offense is worse than all of it. That McNabb Ponder year, that was a more productive offense than this one is. Let that sink in. That year where you're like, man, the worm burners, and then we had Christian Ponder. Yeah, that was a better offense. 2013, Castle, Ponder, Josh Freeman game, that was a better offense than this. That team would score more points than this team would with Matt Castle and year 3 Christian Ponder. That 2010 year, Favre hurt, Joe Webb, all that weird stuff, better offense than this. All of it. About 2006, Kelly Holcomb. I think a geriatric Brad Johnson.
Brooks Bollinger.
Better offense than that. And that was pre-Adrian Peterson. Better offense than this. That team was a better offense than this team. So I think about what play, the whole offensive staff, I think, is on notice. And I include Kevin O'Connell in that, because even when you include the defense, which has been fine.
Yeah.
By net, this team is less productive by EPA than every other team since 2000 that has gotten a head coach fired. This is a less productive team than 2001, than 2005, than 2010, 2013, and 2021. All of those years got a coach fired. If this one doesn't, it speaks to, the political capital that Kevin O'Connell has. But going into 2010, Brad Childress had signed an extension and was a candidate for Coach of the Year preseason and had all the good world coming off the 2009 year.
Yeah.
Things went awry. The team quit on him. Well, the team is quitting on O'Connell too. You know, the statistical drop-off between 2009 and 2010 is almost identical to the statistical drop-off between 2024 and 2025. This is very much what we are going. We are going through a 2010 again. And that got coaches fired. And if the Vikings want to say, hey, we've got a lot of leash for Kevin O'Connell, but we're going to clear out your offensive staff, I could see that. And O'Connell is just going to have to rehire everybody. We get rid of Phillips, McCown, Cooper, maybe Keaton McCardell gets thrown out with the bathwater. Everybody. That might be what happens. And I think something's got to give, right? You can't have the worst offense in Vikings history since Les Steckel and just say, we believe in the guys, we're going to run it back. You can't blame injuries or luck and hope things turn around. This is not a 9-win Kirk Cousins team that was tiebreakers away from the playoffs. This is a disaster. So that's where I stand on the firing of guys right now, which is different than what I was saying a month ago. I think things have gotten quite a bit worse in this losing streak. Yeah. And dramatically so. I think mid-season it wouldn't do anything for you. Because all you're doing is promoting guys from within on the same staff that you're mad at. But I definitely want to see a different approach, especially now that you've got a little bit of data on McCarthy. And you're going to get, we've only seen 6 games. We're going to see 5 more. We've only seen half of what we're going to see of McCarthy this year. And whether that's good or bad, and you want to go with different quarterbacks is one question. But the other one is, if you're going to stick with McCarthy, what kind of offensive staff can you bring in that you think can maximize his skill set? Because right now he's driving the Sam Darnold car, and he ain't Sam Darnold. So what do you want to bring in that maybe could be better for him, that could work it? That's maybe a little simpler, or maybe uses his bullet passes a little bit more efficiently. Asks more of his strengths and less of his weaknesses. That's all, January, February conversations that are going to happen in Minnesota. And then the real question is, who's having them?
Yeah. My stance on the whole Cooper thing is I think he's a good coach, but maybe it's just a situation like you said. Nothing's working, and we need to try new things. And sometimes those new voices can do a really good thing. Sometimes it absolutely bombs. We'll see what they end up doing. I'm fascinated to kind of watch these last few games, especially once the Packers win. The Vikings are out of the playoffs. Packers just need one more win and it's done. And I want to see how this team plays when they are officially knocked out of the playoffs. What does that look like? How does the effort shift? Does it shift at all? Do they play where it's just very laissez-faire? Because I will say, I thought the defense played really hard on Sunday. I thought the offense, the vibes just felt really off. Felt like there was some dejection, and we talked about that earlier. That's kind of human nature. Before we go, I kind of want to bring in producer Dave, because I know he's going to have a couple thoughts on this. Anything else you want to talk about, Luke, before we get out of here?
No, I want to hear Dave cook.
Hey, I've been fascinated by it. Absolutely, especially talking Cooper. I think the third set you're thinking of is sync set. It's where they go into the Z shape straight off the get-go, and it's a shuffle back.
Yes, that is. I think I knew it by a different word, but yes, I know it as a short set.
Okay. But that's the way I was brought up with that.
Actually, can I tell you a story from a high school high school thing? We would so this was during a previous iteration where I was working with a high school, and the call for a short pass set they would actually call the protection in the play call from the sideline, where it would be, they would have a hand signal for it, and it would be it would be like this, right? Like short, and the code word would have to change all the time. So they couldn't just say short, right? So they just started, there was a player on the team who was pretty small kid, who was like a little running back, to protect identities. I'll say his name was Brian. And so they would start, instead of saying short, they would say at the line, Brian.
I love that. That's tremendous.
Cool. No, it's going to be interesting how this plays out. You mentioned 2010. You brought up on your own show that once Chile was fired, they brought in hired Frazier from
within because he had a defense that had buy-in and all the players liked him.
And we know how bad that turned out.
Right, which is, I think, a pretty good argument against what some people are saying, make Flores the head coach. That would kind of be make Leslie Frazier the head coach. We don't like Childress. Obviously, they're very different guys, but I would say that there's cautionary lessons from the Leslie Frazier thing you have to make sure you're not doing again.
Oh, the parallels to 2010 they're just out there. They're so close. Minus, the roof falling in and all that.
Right. Well, the biggest difference is Flores has a head coaching experience. He already had his disastrous first tenure that he very much has learned lessons from. And is he a different guy now? Which is a very important question that is kind of probably what you're driving that in the coaching interviews if you are going to make that consideration.
But if any team got away with hiring Flores straight off the get-go and not go foul of the league because of the lawsuit, it would be the Vikings because he's already on the payroll.
That's the job he could have. It really depends on the Wilfs' outlook on all this. Are they looking at this as a blip, down year, made some mistakes, let's learn from it? Or are they looking at this as something that as proof of hopelessness and we have to try a new build?
Great question.
That's what they will be grappling. I'm sure they're talking about that in meeting rooms already.
I'm sure
a lot of wild discussions are going to happen from us and across all of Vikings sphere, I guess is the best way to say it, because Vikings are 4-8, and I never thought I would be dreading watching a Vikings game on my birthday on Sunday, but here we are. It should be an interesting one, and we'll be back next week. We'll have the Real Forno Show tomorrow night, Thursday, 6:05 Central Time, back at our normal time, Tool Bloggers on Saturday at 10:05 Central, and post-game show. And in between those, you should go check out Luke on Lockdown Vikings and his Patreon, patreon.com/Luke Braun NFL. I'm Tyler. He's Luke. It's producer Dave. SKOL Vikings.
SKOL Vikings. Thanks for watching. Please like, subscribe, and ring the bell, and share this episode with your friends and even your enemies. We'd love it. Thanks for watching Vikings First and SKOL. We are part of the Fans First Sports Network, and we appreciate each and every one of you. SKOL.